deal, Dennis. It's Friday night. You're in your cups a bit, right? I shouldn't say in your cups. You had a few glasses of wine. I'm still nursing my afternoon coffee, as it were.
I had some wine with dinner. I don't know if that'll positively or negatively impact my ability to give advice. I feel like positively. I'm in that sweet spot. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, Dennis, I've heard that. I always podcast a little better with a few drinks in me. Don't worry, don't worry
I
about it.
always find when I've had a couple of drinks, suddenly all the world's problems become much easier to solve. That's all it's in my experience.
Maybe the world leaders need to adopt that.
Maybe.
All right, today, Dennis, someone submitted another question on htdpod.com. If you'd like your
Mhm.
question answered, obviously head over there. You can be anonymous. You can leave a name. You can use your whole life story, or you can tell us nothing. We'll answer whatever question you throw in front of us. This one is, this is a doozy. I've read this a few times. I'm thinking, my God, I'm all this over. Hi, I was reassigned to a different team in work in October following a promotion. When I went for the promotion, both myself and my boss didn't think I'd be reassigned, as there was also an opening on my old team, but my new team was a higher priority to fill. My
Mhm.
new team are really nice and the work is challenging and interesting, but I loved my old job and my old team so much that I just want to go back. Is there a way to click my ruby slippers and get back to my old team, or do I just need to accept that growth is change?
This is
What's the
like an
deal, Dennis?
inverse grass is greener syndrome, right? Like you've moved and you have like, I don't know if you've rose tinted glasses, but it's this idea like, oh, I might have actually liked the old position better.
Well, so what it sounds like to me is there was a promotion opportunity both within the old team and this other new team. And
The expectation
this,
was it would be in the same team, and that didn't pan out, right?
right. The need was greater on another team. And so that's where the resource went. And, that's how companies operate. Um, very, it's tough, because what do you do first of all, if we go kind of ex ante and think, how do we arm ourselves against this? You could go in there for the promotion and say, look, I'm really interested in this one position, but you never want to go into a situation where you're looking for a promotion and instantly limit the opportunity, right? I don't
Right.
think
I would
anyone, I
describe,
don't,
above all, I would describe myself as inflexible. That's like one of my top
yeah.
qualities, right?
So just like ex ante, it's like the decision to do this, you were always taking this gamble. It's supernatural to think they're going to put me on my old team. It's a product I'm familiar with. It's a
Mhm.
team I'm familiar with. I already have the experience, and that just didn't happen here. Is growth is change is weird. I think change is growth, maybe what they meant to say there, because I don't know about growth is change necessarily being the case. I think
I think what they
as you
mean is
grow, we
that
change.
to grow, you have to embrace change, right? You can't, to be able to grow, you can't just be stuck doing the same kind of thing over and over again. And should they lean into that as opposed to be trying to run away from it, it feels like their instinct is right now.
Yeah, I think look, we layer and layer and layer so much kind of civility and culture and civilization on top of that lizard brain we have at the base of our skull. But at the end of the day, we're still kind of animals fighting for survival. Our survival mechanisms are far outdated. We don't live in that world anymore. But one of the lasting effects is we fear change, because change is the unknown.
Mhm.
It's very, very difficult to embrace change. Those, I think, that do embrace change, and I'm just abstracting away from this specific example right now. Those that embrace change, I dare say, will find themselves to be more successful, right? Because you're an outlier. Most people do not embrace change because, again, that lizard brain tells us, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to
Mhm.
do it. I want to deal with a known commodity. And I only put that out there because I think we all struggle with change to various degrees, and it's helped me to understand why that is. You're not being lazy, okay? You're not necessarily an inflexible person. Your lizard brain is saying, we don't want the unknown. We want the knowable. We don't want change, because change makes us feel unsafe. But when we know everything, we can control everything, we feel safe. So let's just get that out of the way right now, right? Like, fearing change is a natural animalistic instinct. We do want to overcome it. Now, here, the first thing, now without a lot more context, the first thing I'd say is, how long have you been on the new team? You
Mhm.
say you like the new team. You say it's challenging. So
That sounds like
how much of a
backpedaling to me, though. That sounds a little bit like, well, it's not terrible, right?
right? And that's true. And I mean, there's this idea of, have you given it a fair shake? And I don't know if you have given it a fair shake. There's no way to tell. I will say
In abstract, what would you what amount of time to you sounds like a fair shake? Because I have a figure in my head, and I'm curious if it's close to what you think.
2 to 3 months,
I'm thinking like 6, so we're not too far
six.
off.
Okay. No, I mean we're 50% off, right? You're 100% more time than me. 2 to 3 months, maybe that's too short. I will say and I think you know this about me, because of the work I've chosen, and the amount of control seemingly I have, although sometimes my work schedule and work duties are totally out of control. I do highly value happiness as a commodity in my work life and in my personal life. So that's where I'm struggling with this question, because the fact is, if you just are unhappy, and again, if this is just backpedaling, maybe you are truly unhappy in your position, you should make effort to return to the old position just for the sake of your own well-being. That being said, for your professional identity, for your growth within the company, for growing as a professional, I'd say stay where you are. You have all the connections. I mean, we do this podcast because Dennis and I used to work together.
Mhm.
We spoke multiple times a day. We were very, very connected. And now, we're on different countries and different continents. And one of the reasons we do this podcast is to stay connected. So if you have old friends and an old team that you still work in the same company as, it takes very little effort to stay connected there. So I think that isn't a real concern. Now, you liked working with them, I get that, but the long play is you grow and grow and grow, and then get that next promotion back into your old team. But by
What
then,
I
of
was
course, you're
gonna
gonna love this team.
what I was going to say that's interesting is I think there's always a factor when you're thinking about applying for a job, right? Like let's say you want to make a move, like a lateral or slightly upper move. Like, okay, is this the kind of company I want to work in? Is this the kind of direction I want to take my career in? And those are all decisions and considerations you can make ahead of time. And it sounds like this person didn't actually get to do that because they were basically thought they were applying for a different job they ended up getting, right? But the thing that has the biggest impact on your day-to-day satisfaction within the job is something that is totally abstracted to you when you're applying for it, which is the people you interact with on a day-to-day
For
basis there.
sure. For
That
sure.
is so important. And you and I have talked about this, that you, like when we worked with John, especially, John always said he had this group of people that he wanted to work with. And it almost didn't matter what he was doing in
Mhm.
that space. And we would always joke if John called us up the next day and was like, "Hey, I've inherited a bunch of elephants. We run a circus now." We'd be like, "Okay, let's go. Let's get some jugglers. That's fine." You know what I mean? And that is so impossible to know ahead of time. And that's something that I always struggle with. And like even in my career, when people come to ask me, "Hey, I'm thinking of moving jobs," I'm like, there's an unknown factor that will actually affect, 35 of the 40 hours a week you spend working there that you have no idea of. And I know that sounds like me scaremongering about change, but that's the truth. And that's something that changes in companies. People come, people leave, people transfer, much like this. So as you warm to and get to know those people, I think that'll have a bigger impact on the work you feel like you're doing, even if the work itself hasn't changed over time.
Yeah, and one of the things you said is super important though, which is people come and go. So even if you get hired into a team that you love, people may have loved working with you, and I'm sure if you loved working with them, they loved working with you, and suddenly, poof, you're gone. I do want to
Right.
say as a footnote, don't do this. Don't do this as a company. Let people know what position they're interviewing for. Like, I don't understand this idea of like there's an opening in multiple departments. You do one interview and we'll put you where you want to go. That seems nonsensical to me. You should know what job you're actually interviewing for, and
Well,
then
I
interview
mean,
for that
this
job.
happens though. Let's take it out to Card Shop Live, for example, right? With where you're working right now, you guys have
Sure.
live breakers for different products. You might interview somebody, and they might think like, "Oh, I'm going to go break Pokemon product," but by the time they get hired, you're like, "Actually, we're really hot into NFL season right now. You're breaking NFL cards." You're like, "Okay," and that's a different team, different schedule, or whatever. That stuff happens.
It does happen. I think that it's very, very, very different, in my opinion, to cold interview for a company where you have no idea what the dynamics, the culture, um, of the company is, and then applying for promotion within the company. Because let's face it, if you
Internally,
work at
yes,
Card,
that's fair.
I mean, just draw on your own experience here, Dennis. When we were working at Channel Fireball, you knew you were in the wild, wild west. You knew it. You could wake up and there could be elephants, and we could be in the circus business. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I woke up one day and I was running events around the world. And then a week later, I woke up and I was breaking football cards on TikTok. Like, it's the nature of the business in this business. I think larger,
I
more developed, more mature companies, maybe not quite as much.
I do remember when we were running all the tournaments, and then there was a time when COVID hit and they shut everything down. Obviously, we were like, okay, how do we sell? Now that we can't run any events anywhere in the world, how do we sell a card game that it is now in many places functionally illegal to meet up and play?
Yeah.
How do we figure that out? So yeah, that sort of stick and moviness, barring some sort of global massive historical event like happened in 2020, 2021,
Mhm.
Generally, I would expect a higher degree of predictability in what you're looking to apply for, when you're looking for a promotion. Most of the time when you get a promotion in a company, by the way, it's just a little bit more work, maybe an additional direct report or two, but broadly speaking, your responsibilities don't change very much.
Yeah, this was your uprooted to a new place. I
Mhm.
think getting to the heart of this question, this idea of clicking your ruby slippers and going back, difficult to do. You could burn a lot of professional and
Uh-huh.
even personal equity doing it. If I were in a position, okay, where I wanted to make that move, the only proactive way I could see doing it is going to the powers that be, whoever interviewed me for this position, with an idea or a set of ideas or a plan specifically tailored to that old team and
Mhm.
say, hey, I have a really good idea for Team X. I think we should do this, this, and this. I have a loose idea of how I want to implement it. I'd love to join that team again to put this into action. And I think then you're not just saying, hey, I don't want to do X, I don't want to do Y, I want to go back to X. You're saying, I am so invested in team X, right? Because I did that for a long time. I have some ideas. I have some improvements. I have some really, really great ideas and goals I think Team X should pursue. And I would like to help them achieve those goals and pursue them. I think that is the most persuasive way you could get yourself back onto the old team. Now, of course, the problem you run into there is what are they going to do with your position? If it was a high need position, they're going to want that filled. And I don't know if they've already filled. If they've already
Yeah.
filled that position on Team X, it's going to become much, much more difficult. But
It depends
again,
how liquid and seasonal the company is, right? So if people get transferred all the time, if projects come and go, if new clients come on, that kind of thing, I think making it aware to your manager now that, hey, I like this and it's interesting, but I think in a vacuum, if an opportunity were to arise, I would have preferred to be doing the kind of work I was doing on my old team. I don't think that's as big a mark against you as a lot of people would be afraid of. Obviously, it depends on the industry and the company culture, but I
mm,
don't think you necessarily need to come armed with like ideas as much. I think and also, I was going to say, I think having an open and honest conversation with your manager is fine. That very heavily depends on your manager and the relationship you have with them. And if you're new there, you probably don't feel comfortable enough to have those kind of discussions yet. But I think on two fronts in that case, stick it out, see if you warm to the work, if it becomes more challenging. If I remember when I first got a role in product, before I work where I work now, I was really overwhelmed. I was like, "Whoa, this is much more technical than I expected it to be." There's way more like talking with developers about like solution architecture and managing Jira tickets and stuff. And I was like, "This is not what I wanted to get into." And lo and behold, 1, 2, 3, 4 months in, I was like, "Oh, the job actually isn't a lot of that. That feels like a large portion of it, but most of the time, it's actually not that important. It's much more about stakeholder management. It's much more about selling narratives and ideas and making sure resources are spent efficiently, not about getting into the nitty gritty details and stuff. And I think, and I'm sure you've experienced this every time you get into a new role, the job, how it looks 3 months in, is very different to how it looks 9 months in, right?
yes.
And the other parallel thing along that is you will build relationships, build inroads with the people you work with your manager and stuff like that, and start to get a sense of, is this actually the place I kind of do like? And look, I want to also be honest, there can come a time where you're like, okay, no, I've decided that this really isn't what I wanted. But hopefully by then you have an opportunity to be able to say, hey, look, if there's ever an opportunity back on the old team, I think I would be interested in that, because your manager's incentivized, generally speaking, if they're a good manager, for you to be happy. No one wants
Mhm.
reluctant employees, right?
For
That's
sure.
nobody's
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. I think the other thing, and you touched on this, I just want to underscore it, is the mindset with which you approach the new team is very important. Don't make up your mind
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to stick this out, if you're going to make this work, make it work. I'm going to go back to that, like the power of now, right? Like do everything you can to change the situation, um, leave the situation, or accept the situation the way it is. Those are your three options. And I think this is a do everything you can to make the situation work with an open mind and an open heart. Embrace this team, embrace the challenges, and go for it. And once you've done that honestly and genuinely for whatever time you think is the appropriate amount of time, and it sounds like we're landing between 3 and 6 months, maybe 3 to 9
Let's
months,
call it four and a
you
half.
could
Yeah.
say, call it 4.5. You could say, okay, I'm not sure about this. I do think, I mean, Dennis and we are slightly at loggerheads here, where I do think you want to be proactive and present a return to the team with something fresh to offer,
Mm-hmm.
not just because I think that just saying I'm not happy here, I want to go back before, is very much a I don't want to be here message. I like the other place better. Whereas I think that you can kind of skirt that issue. Now, again, if that's very honest, I do think if you're in a good culture and you're with a good manager, you do want honesty. That's super important. And any managers out there that are listening, if you have directs that can't be honest with you, like really kind of honest with you with no repercussions, you need to revisit that, because that's the only way you're going to build a functional team. And I mean, like I've said this before, but on one-on-ones, I would just say, like, if you're not going to be here in 3 years, that's fine. Can we just plan it out? If you're not going to be here in 5 years, that's fine. Let's just plan it out. And my number one goal always, like, I need you to take my job. My number one success metric as a manager is when you take my job or are promoted above me, because that means I manage you to complete success. In fact, to more success than I'm seeing. So that's probably a podcast and a discussion for a different
Right.
time. But don't have the mindset that all you want to do is get back to your old team. That's going to make you miserable, and it's probably going to doom you to failure in your current endeavors. Embrace this team, embrace the challenge. There are no magical slippers to just click and go back in time. That doesn't work.
You're right.
So
There's
I
a
think,
couple of awkward conversations and a couple of months of figuring out definitely lie between you and success here, unfortunately.
but that is growth for what it's worth. And this situation um, is going to inspire a lot of different change and growth within you as you adapt to a new team or find a way to get back to your old team. So no matter what, I think on a personal and professional level, you are going to grow and be enriched by this experience. I just hope it's far more in the positive way, but of course, sometimes it doesn't work out that way.